Okay, now we're going to talk a little bit about rotation today. So when we talk about rotation, first of all, it's rotating a point or a shape a certain number of degrees around the origin or the point 0, 0. Now, there are some that are more common than others, but I've actually gone through and written some rules here that are kind of helpful. So when you have a rule, they start out with what the regular point is, and if it were to follow this rotation, this is what the point would change to. So I'm going to give you some examples today. So these talk about CW, which is clockwise, and CCW, which is counterclockwise. So if I was talking about clockwise, that means that it would travel the same direction that a clock does. So a clock goes in that direction. Counterclockwise goes the opposite way. Might help if I went the opposite way. So it should go this way. So counterclockwise, the way a clock goes, counterclockwise, the opposite way. So if I have 90 degrees clockwise or 270 counterclockwise, those are the same. So let me show you what I mean. So if this was my X and Y axis, and let's say I go 90 degrees clockwise, that would go here. And if I start in the same spot, if I go 270 counterclockwise, we end up at the same point. So I just want you to know they're both the same. So if you see either one of these, they follow this same rule here. So if my point starts out as XY, the point it switches to, the Y changes to the X spot, and the X goes to the Y spot. And when it says negative X, that means the opposite of whatever X you had to start with. Okay, now if you do 180, whether it's clockwise or counterclockwise, they're both going to be the same. So if this were my X and Y axis, 180 degrees clockwise is going to go that way. 180 degrees counterclockwise goes in the same spot. Okay, so just so you know that. This rule says it goes from the point being XY to being negative X and negative Y. That means it's going to be the opposite of whatever X was and the opposite of whatever Y was. Okay, now if it's 270 counterclockwise, or excuse me, clockwise. So here's my X and Y. And if it goes 270 clockwise, it's going to end up there. Or if you go 90 counterclockwise, same spot. Now, if I look at the rule, whatever X and Y starts out as, the Y value goes first and becomes opposite, and the X value becomes the Y. So I actually think following the rule is the easiest thing, in my opinion, to try to do. So let's take a look at a couple so you can kind of see how this works. So I have this shape that is right here. I'm going to rotate 180 degrees around the origin. Now you notice that this doesn't say clockwise or counterclockwise, because for 180 it's exactly the same. So this is usually what I do. So when I start out, I do my pre-image. That's kind of my original points. And then my image is what it's going to change into. Okay, so based on our rule up here, we said it's XY for the first one. Let's look at the 180 again. And it becomes negative X, negative Y. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here and actually get the points for these three corners, and we're going to change them. So the three that I have, let's see, we have H, J, and Q. So if I look at this point H right here, I'd have to go 1, 2, negative 3 over, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that means that for H it's going to be negative 3, negative 5. Now if I go to J here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So negative 5, 1, 2, 3, and down 3. So -5, -3. To get this point here, if I start here, it doesn't go left or right, so that means my x is 0, but it goes down 1, so that's -1. Now, when I talk about the image, all they do is add that little prime to it. So after each of these, you're going to see that little prime. And to get the points, I'm going to follow this rule. So I'm going to take the opposite of x and the opposite of y. So if this is -3, it's going to become +3. If it's -5, it's going to become +5. So if this is -5, it's going to become +5. It's -3, it's going to become +3. If it's 0, I can't take a negative of that at all, so it's just going to be 0. -1 becomes +1. Now I'm going to take these 3 points and I'm actually going to graph them. So if I start out here, I go over 3 and I go up 5, so it's going to be right up there. And that's going to be H prime. Okay, then I'm going to go to this one, so 5, 3. So over 5, up 3. That's going to be J prime. And for Q, it's 0, 1, so that's going to go right there. And then you go ahead and draw your lines. Okay, I think it's much easier to make the table ahead of time and to follow the rule than to try to move 1 point one at a time. I just think a lot of kids get confused by that. Okay, let's try one more rotation. So this one is rotate 90 degrees counterclockwise. So that means it's going to be 90 degrees counterclockwise around the origin. And I have 3 points. I have B, S. I think it's kind of hard to read this. This is actually E. So let's talk about those 3 points. So if I go to make my table, I'm going to have my pre-image and my image. Sorry guys, I'm trying to make enough room for myself to write here. Now, I know it's going to start out X, Y, it always does, but let's go back to our list and get 90 degrees counterclockwise. Okay, so 90 degrees counterclockwise is going to go to -y, X. So -y, X. And I have B, E, and S. So if I look at B, B's right here. So I go 1, 2, 3, over 4, up 5. So B is going to be 4, 5. If I go to E right here, it's going to be over 5 and then not up at all. So it's going to be 5, 0. Okay, now if I look at S right here, it's going to be over 2 and up 2. So S is 2, 2. Okay, so what we're going to do is this Y is going to go to the first spot, and we're going to take the opposite sign. X just switches spots. So on this first one, if I look at these two, 4 is going to be the X. We said that just switches spots, so that goes here. This I have to take the opposite of. So the opposite of +5 is -5. Okay, let's go to the next one. Oh, that's B prime. So if I go to E prime, right here, X just changes spots. So X goes from being here to being here. And then Y, we switch the sign in the spot. So 0, it's going to switch spots and go here, and it can't switch signs. So it's just going to be 0. Okay, for this one, it's kind of nice because they're both 2s, so a little bit easier in that one. So X value goes in the Y spot. So that goes here. And we take y and switch the sign, it's going to go there. So that becomes -2. And that's s prime. So let's graph those. So -5, 4 would be over -5 and then up 4. So it's going to be right there. That's b prime. Now e prime is 0, 5. So that's going to be right there. S is -2, +2. So that's s prime. Go ahead and draw our lines. Okay, we'll talk a little bit more about rotation in our next video.